Okay, so we're gonna get to.
Yeah. Go.
Kevin's shuffling with the microphone. Okay, so we're gonna get to. I think it's the fun part of computer science when you're actually
Yeah.
gonna start. Actually, the fun part is functions, but this is close. This is the introduction to Boolean statements, which is the way that we're gonna control. Huh?
Boolean and if statements.
Yeah. The way we're gonna control the flow of our program. So if you caught, I think it was Stegosaurus. If you caught the previous video in which we were explaining that we had to basically stop the program so we can see what's going on without it executing completely. Another way of controlling the flow of your program is with an if statement, which basically is kind of like a branch. Imagine if you had two paths to take, two or more paths, and depending on what conditions are present, you're going to react accordingly. This is basically just an if statement. It's basically a statement that will be either true or false, and you'll do something if it's true, or you'll skip it if it's false. But something useful to know before you actually start doing if statements is the truth table, which has to do with if statements that contain more than one single Boolean statement. And what a Boolean statement is just a condition that can be either true or false.
Yup.
Okay, so the truth tables are up there. Kevin, if you would hover.
Hover.
Right there. In those comments right there. Oh, by the way, that is commented inside of our program. The compiler will throw it out. It actually doesn't do absolutely anything. It's just for people that read it. So somebody reads your code, they'll see the comments, and then they'll be like, oh, cool, this is what this means. Or you put a little note somewhere, and yeah, it doesn't actually do anything.
They're exactly like that. They're just notes, so you know what each line of code can be doing and stuff like that. So if you wanted to share your code with somebody else, they could look at your comments and figure out what you're trying to do. It's a little bit easier that way.
In BIM, we got two ways of making comments. There's that, if you can hover over the /* right there, that's how you close it, and the other one's how you open it.
Yes.
Which is that one right there. And there's another way of making comments, which is just with a // that comments out anywhere. So anything afterwards, it's a comment. Comments.
You don't like comment?
Comments. Okay. Alright, so we got sidetracked a little bit, but a truth table. The truth table up there that says and is our... It is basically saying condition and condition look at me being pro. So
you spelled condition wrong.
I did?
Yeah, it's an in.
What is this?
Super pro.
English class? Okay. So we're testing two conditions. When you do and, both conditions have to be true for the statement to be true. So let's say if I were to say to Kevin over here, do this only if phone and wallet. That's a little bit cryptic, isn't it?
Tiny bit.
Okay,
cryptic.
how about this? You can only enter this ride if you are over 12 years old and have an ID.
Yeah.
That's a lot less cryptic, right?
That's a lot less.
Yeah. So and is basically saying that both conditions have to be true before the statement that you put inside of the if is true.
Yes.
And the way that you do an and is like so. 1 second. Kevin, huge, bruh. Okay. Alright. That is our and. That's our truth table. So if any of the conditions is false when you're doing an and if statement, then they're both false. Go ahead and do the other one, yeah. Now for the OR, it's kind of like the opposite, sort of.
Kinda.
Sort of, yeah.
There's more opportunities to be true because only one condition has to be true for the whole thing to be considered true.
Okay, so you can open an account in my bank if you're over 18 or you have $100.
Yes.
So only one of those things has to be true for me to let you open up a bank account, basically.
Yeah.
It is a lot better than if I were to say you need $100 and be over 18 to open up a bank account in my bank.
Yep. And then the syntax for or are these two pipes, and that's the key that has the backslash. You just hold shift, hit that backslash key, and it gives you that vertical line.
Is that what it's called? Is it called a pipe?
Yeah, it's called pipe.
I did not know.
I've always called it a
I
pipe.
called it bar.
What do you call it, bar?
Double bar.
Double bar.
Alright, so Kevin's going to go over the actual if statement real quick.
Alright, so we're going to use the old the math program, the example that we showed earlier, and we're just going to add an if statement to this. So what we can do is figure out, we're just going to do like a simple range. So once we get this, we can do an if, oops, need to take caps lock. So if, and then we got to open our parentheses. This is part of the syntax, and we have to give it a condition to look for. So we got to check to see if our result is, we're going to say greater than 100, and since we're looking for a range, we want to make sure our result is in between a certain amount. So we want to do our result is less than 200. So, and notice that I have less than and not less than equal to, so I'm doing exclusive, so I'm not including 100 and 200. They have to be in between 100 and 200. We can change that if we add an equal sign if we wanted to. So this is just a simple and for the if statement. So inside of these parentheses right here, the ones that are lit up, if this whole thing evaluates to true, it's going to execute the block of code that it's given inside of these curly braces. So if this is true, we want it to say
your value is within the range?
The value is in range of these numbers or something like that. So we just do a C out, and then let's do
your value is in the range of 100 and 200.
And yep.
And it has to be with that voice.
There we go. So we can have that. Now this line of code right here, this C out, is only going to execute if this evaluates to true. So we can also print out an else statement. Usually you can have an if by itself. You can have an else if you have multiple things you want to test for. So like if I wanted to do a different range, we can do the same line and give it a different test variable. So we can do, oops, just one. So we can do 300.
Do an or.
Or.
Yeah. Come on.
Okay, that's fine. It will give us a lot more variables though.
Yeah, it will.
Matter of fact, it'll give us all of them. But that's okay. Actually, let's not do or.
Yeah, actually, let's not do or. Yeah,
Let's not do or.
I just thought about it.
Yeah.
Never mind.
So,
go ahead and do your thing.
So let's do a result. Now let's do another range. So let's do 400. So that'll be another one, and then we can print out these three lines again, and then do a. So there we go. So now if when the code gets down and it reads this number right here, it's going to test it. If this is true and this is true, it's going to execute this line. If this evaluates to false by either one of these being false, it's going to go down to the next set of that's part of the if block, sort of. It's going to hit the else if, and it's going to do this test. And say if none of those tests come out, we're going to have an else statement, which we don't have to give it a test because if none of these cases match, then we're going to jump into this. So we're going to do a C out and out of range. And we can do that, and then we're going to...
Why don't you yank that line where you're actually outputting the power on top of the if, so we know what it is before we go into that.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So there we go. So we're gonna show you, yeah. So yeah, this is just a modification to the original file or program. Now notice that I don't have curly braces around this. You can. It's perfectly fine to throw them on there. But when you have a test condition that's only one line, you don't have to put these curly braces. So if I got rid of one of these curly braces or something like that, one of the pairs, it would still work fine. It would only go down to the first line and read it, and that's the only line that's going to be counted towards that. So if you have more than one line that's going to be executed in this, in these blocks right here, you want to have these curly braces. So one or more lines, have to have them. If you only have one line, it's optional. So let's go and compile this, and then let's run it. So now we have to enter in a number. So let's see if we can get the first if statement to set off. So let's enter in 10. Actually, let's enter in 11. Because 10 will give us 100. Actually, let's enter in 10, since we're exclusive now. Exclusive. So yeah.
It's out of range.
So it's out of range, because 10 is 100. Is 100 greater than 100?
No.
False. Is 100 less than 200? True. But since this is an and, this
False.
whole thing gets a false.
False and true is false with an and.
Exactly. So now let's run it again, and let's give it 11. And then there we go.
True for the first one.
So that's our power, and then that's our result, and then we test the result. It is in the range. So if we ran it a third time and try to get the second part of it, and what numbers would we have to do for that
15? No, more.
16?
I don't know.
I don't know. Let's see.
Do 19. 19. 19 works. Yeah.
19 works?
Yeah, 19 works. I'm pro, dude. I know.
So we have that 100 range that we don't test for. So 19. I think Puga knows how to math. Oh, check it out. So yeah, so it skipped the first if, or it didn't skip it. It tested the first if, and it found out that this evaluates to false, so it went to test the second else if, and it said this is true, so it executed this. Now, if it's true, it doesn't continue testing these. It's only gonna do this one time and then skip the rest of the if, else if, and else, and move on through the rest of the code.
Yep.
Like you notice when I entered in 100, it only executed this line, and it continued doing the rest of the code. It did not bother communicating with these.
And the reason why is because, if you go back to the code real quick so we can see it a little bit better, the order of events in here is that first if is the one that triggers the chain of events. So it's if, then else if, and then else. That else if and else all belong to the same if, which is the first if.
Yes.
So you can actually have multiple if statements, right? And they will all happen separately as long as they don't have an else in front. So this else right here depends if this condition is not true. This else if is only going to check if this is false. This else is only going to check if this and this is false. You can have multiple else ifs, but you can only have one else. You can have as many ifs as you want, and you can have as many else ifs for each if that you want. Yes. And I think you can have any amount of else's for each if that you want.
No.
No?
You can only have one else.
For each if? Or is it
For each if.
For each if, yeah.
Yeah.
But you can have multiple ifs.
Yes.
So you can have multiple else's.
Yes, but it's not looked at it that way. It's a 1-to-1.
The chances of you making a bunch of if statements are probably going to be right before the switch statement. Then you're going to get mad that you have to do if statements before.
Yep. Alright, so that's a basic look of the if statements and Boolean logic. Just remember that whatever's inside of these parentheses has to evaluate to true for this block of code to be executed. So just remember that and you should be fine. Yeah.
Next video we'll do some more stuff with if. We'll do some if statements with or, some single if statements, and some other, if statements instead of if statements. What about that? Cool.
Yeah.
Let's do some
All right.
other stuff. See you guys.
That's it.